changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with some instant inspiration from Chicken Soup for the Soul. So let's talk about a common problem: how to get through the holidays after you've lost someone. A couple of weeks ago, we talked to Gail Sellers, who lost her son, but then found a long-lost brother just in time for Christmas one year. Most of us don't have that kind of experience, and we're facing yet another holiday without that special person. For me, it has actually been a year of those holidays, as my mother died on January 3rd, so I've done my daughter's wedding, my 60th birthday, my first Mother's Day without her, my first Thanksgiving, etc. without her. And now I'm facing my first Christmas without my mother. And it's really hard because it was Christmas Eve last year when I saw her being okay for the last time. In fact, she stayed extra long on Christmas Eve last year, which was very unusual for her. And she sent me a thank you note that she wrote on Christmas Day saying what a great time she had. I actually think she knew there was something wrong with her, and that's why she stayed so long on Christmas Eve, because it was only a couple of days later that she was rushed to the hospital. So I was looking for some inspiration for myself in Chicken Soup for the Soul, Grieving and Recovery, and I found a couple of stories that I want to share with you. In the first one, Sally Schwartz Friedman finally decides to look inside this old metal recipe box that she has brought home from her mother's home. Her mother died in December, 3 years earlier, and Sally couldn't exactly explain why she had left this particular possession of her mother's untouched. But now she was finally ready to open up that recipe box and look inside. Her mom had actually been a legendary cook. She had never used recipes herself, but as she got older, she had started writing them down for Sally, saying that someday Sally might need them. And now that someday had actually come. So Sally read through the recipes, and it was like a tour of her childhood. Not only the meals, but the events that went with the meals, and even her mother's familiar handwriting that Sally never got to see anymore. There were recipes from Sally's great-grandmother, too, so it was quite a trip into her family history, and she found herself smiling and crying as she spent the afternoon reading the recipes that she found in that green metal recipe box. She even found special messages on the recipes. Her mother actually had written, "Do not overcook, Sally," on the recipe card for pot roast. So hours later, Sally says that she felt a kind of peace that she hadn't felt in a long time because she felt like her mother was back in her life again.
The Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast continues straight ahead.
Chicken Soup for the Soul celebrates your pets and the power of the human-animal bond. I'm Robin Ganzert, CEO of American Humane and host of the new podcast from Chicken Soup for the Soul, Loving Animals. Every week, I'm joined by celebrities and other special guests who share a passion for spreading care, hope, and compassion for the world's unique species. You'll hear inspiring stories of animal rescue and rehab, plus the latest trends in animal welfare. Chicken Soup for the Soul presents Loving Animals with me, Robin Ganzert. Available on Apple Podcast, Google Play, or anywhere you download your favorite podcast.
Allison Knight Kahn shared another way that we can bring our lost loved ones back into our lives, and this is a perfect idea for a family's Christmas or Hanukkah gifts. Allison says that her mom had a black fur coat that she never wore. It just hung in the coat closet, and Allison and her 3 sisters loved to feel that fur and parade around in the coat, which had actually belonged to their grandmother. And for everybody who's listening who doesn't like fur coats, remember this coat was passed down from Allison's grandmother, so it was very old, and it was acquired during a different time when we had a different attitude towards fur coats. Now, Allison's oldest sister, Janet, inherited the house, and along with it came that black fur coat. And many years later, Allison and her sisters each received a surprise package from Janet. And what was it? It was a beautiful teddy bear made from that fur coat. Janet had made 4 teddy bears so that each of the daughters could have this remembrance of their mother and their grandmother. And also it gave them a common element that would continue the bond that the 4 sisters shared. I recall another story we had recently in a podcast about a woman who took a charm bracelet and parceled out the charms to all the granddaughters. So there are lots of ways to take a treasured possession and share it among family members. I pass this along to you today in case it gives you a great idea that you can use in your own family this holiday season. And if you do come up with a great idea, share it with me at my email address, amy@chickensoupforthesoul.com. And maybe we'll even do a podcast with all your good ideas. Thanks for joining me today on the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast. If you'd like to read some more tips from the book that I mentioned, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Grieving and Recovery, then please visit our website, chickensoup.com, and click on the podcast button, and you'll see a link to the book. And you'll also see, when you get there, a whole list of grieving tips that we drew from the book. Join me next time for a couple of really fun stories that will show you how even the simplest tweaks can re-energize your life just by taking a tiny little step outside your comfort zone.